Hey, welcome back to Kevin Wilson SBC. Let's get back on some more no prep discussion. Now, what I want to talk about today, weight placement, can also apply to prep, track, drag racing, but predominantly this is mainly going to appeal more to the no prep, back of the track, pure street racing type drag cars. So let's get started. Thank you for supporting the channel. I'm excited to be talking more about weight placement today. I just want to say I appreciate all of the support that each of you have given me, all of the comments, the thumbs up. Thank you for all of that, and I hope today you will consider giving me a thumbs up and a comment for this video as well. Let's jump in and discuss weight placement a little bit. So to set the scene, here is an amazing drag car that I drew with all of my artistic ability. And what I'd like to focus on today is a little bit about where you can put weight. What does that weight placement mean for load transfer, for static weight? And I even want to touch on what some of my subscribers have called or talked about. Hey, are you going to talk about the butt hurt bar? Yeah, we'll talk about the butt hurt bar. And we'll talk about some of what's going on with the dynamics of the chassis around that type of stuff. For today's video, let's use this red dot let's say that the center of gravity is right here on this car. Let's say that's where the center of gravity falls if we pick this chassis and this car up by the center of gravity, it would perfectly balance itself onto the center of gravity. And for weight placement, what we'll use the yellow and we'll use green for adding weight around the vehicle with regard for this video. Obviously, a drag car sitting still on the staging lanes or at the starting line or whatever, it has static weight. And this is how we calculated the center of gravity of this drag car with it sitting still. Whenever you have a drag car that goes into motion and you launch the car and you apply power, the center of gravity obviously is going to move. And generally, the center of gravity will begin to move rearward because the torque and the driving of the rear tires is naturally going to move load from the front, and it's going to shift that load to the rear. When that happens, the center of gravity will move to the rear of the vehicle, and a lot of times it will go up and move back. But that's our static center of gravity. Another thing to remember is these are great things to know, and I really, when I work with my remote suspension tuning customers, these are things that I am really trying to get handles on so that I can understand how the car is set up. When a car launches and leaves the line, then a lot of these dynamics or all of these dynamics change. And if you can understand what's happening with the car and how these forces act on the car, and you begin to understand how the car should react or may react, and then as you begin to make intelligent decisions based on either the anti-squat line or the percentage of rise or whatever else you're using to understand the current situation, these are all tools that we can begin to use to make educated decisions instead of throwing things at a wall and trying to find out what sticks. Obviously, if you have a car, so let's start with the easiest. You have a car that is pulling the front wheels and wheeling way too hard. We've said before that wheelies are cool for pictures, they're cool for fans to see, but a lot of times when you're doing big wheel stands, you're not winning races per se. And I also want to say that the more weight that you have to add to a vehicle is not ideal. For no prep, I am really hoping to have a car that is 50-50. So 50% of the weight is on the rear and 50% is on the front, with driver in the car and race ready. If I have 51 or 52% of the weight on the rear and I'm a no prep guy, or I'm a back of the track racer, or I'm out on the street racing, hey, 52% on the rear, that's gold for me. Especially if I can get that and have the car as light as possible. When I'm having to add weight, when I have to add extra weight to get the car to react like I want it to, that's only making the car go slower than it would be with less weight. That's common sense, right? The more horsepower and torque to the less weight, the quicker the car is going to move, as long as you can have the same coefficient of traction involved. And the coefficient of traction is critical. If I have to continually add weight, then I'm really kind of defeating the purpose, or maybe I should step back and see, are there better suspension or chassis mods I can make to not have to add so much weight? But the easiest one to understand is a car that pulls the wheels off the track and does wheel stands way too much. And if you think about the rear, the rear center line of our drag car, if you think about pretty much here is the fulcrum, and here is the center line, and everything is pitching around this place right here on the hit with a rear wheel drive car, then the further away from that rotation and the lower that I add weight, the harder it is for it to move that weight up. So if I have a car that is wheel standing excessively, I'm going to add weight as far forward and as low as I can get the weight. We know that the lower the weight, the harder it is to pick up. The higher the weight, once you start to transfer the weight, the easier it is to keep moving the weight back. So for a car that is wheel standing excessively and uncontrollably, and you've done everything that you can do with the ladder bars or the 4-link or the leaf springs, you've tried everything you can do, and you're not running wheelie bars, then your big option is, one, add weight forward and low, or pull power to help control that on the hit. Now obviously a lot of guys are trying not to pull power because we're trying to put down as much power as we can, but power management is absolutely key. I've said this in many other videos. If you are going out and you're no prep racing and you're going to expect to just dump 1,500 horsepower on a virgin road, you're just really going to struggle. You have to be able to pull power out and bring power back in as you get up on the tire, as you've got the tire planted and you've got it stuck. Then you're bringing power in, and you're bringing power in under control and based on data to help you make those decisions. Now, most no prep cars are not adding weight to the front end. Let's face it, most no prep cars, we're doing everything we can to get more weight over the rear tires and to help move weight from the front to the rear, to help move load under acceleration to the front or rear of the car. And you know, a lot of people will tell you right off the bat, go high and as far back as you can get the weight. And what that's going to do is that's going to help the car load the rear slicks more. It's going to apply more sprung weight over top of the slicks, or the drag radials for that matter. Let's face it, the SRC video that I did some analysis on, Boston George was running radials on that street. So, you're going to hear about people telling you to put weight up high and as far back as you can get it. And you're going to see a lot of people add weight onto the housing of the rear end. So that's unsprung weight. And then you have sprung weight. I'm generally more a fan of the sprung weight scenario than I am about adding a bunch of unsprung weight on the housing. There are times where we do run unsprung weight attached to the housing. And what you're doing is you're allowing the percentages to move. So if, let's say, you have a no prep car that naturally sits 54% on the front and 46% on the rear, and you're trying to get that 50-50. You can add a tremendous amount of weight sprung, but at some point you're really just overcoming springs and shock valving. So to keep things in balance, and I talk about balance, there are times where we may have you or recommend that you add some weight to the rear differential that is not sprung weight. I can't give you the magic formula though, because every car is so different, and you need to take into account what your car is doing. Like on the front end, when we're adding weight up here on the front end, far away and down low, 15, 20, 25 pounds makes a huge difference when you start doing that. Well, when you get into the no prep scene and you're trying to get weight as back as far as you can and as high as you can get it, you may be talking 75 pounds, 100 pounds of sprung weight added to help load and push more forces down. The interesting thing that you need to remember, there is such a thing as the polar moment of inertia. And what that tells you is that the further away that you put weight from the center of gravity, the more torque or force it takes to get that weight moving. And a lot of times in the drag racing world, we are taught that the polar moment of inertia is a real physics thing. It is true. And if you are not careful, these extreme weight placements, like on the front, the further away from the center of gravity you can put the weight, the harder and more force it takes to move it. That makes sense. Now, the same is true for the rear end. The further away from the center of gravity that you place the weight, the harder it is, or the more force it takes to get the weight moving. If I have a no prep car that is really struggling to get the front end up and move load to the rear slicks, then I'm not necessarily going to run and put a bunch of weight high and as far back to the rear. We may actually end up doing that, but if you want the front end to come up quicker to move load, a lot of times you're going to add weight over the rear axles, because I'm still putting weight over the slicks, but I'm closer to the center of gravity. I'm closer to where the pitch rotation is happening. And this same amount, let's say I add 100 pounds here, this 100 pounds here is actually going to allow the front end to move quicker and move weight to the rear quicker. Now, the advantage of the weight being back here and higher is once I start to move that weight, then the more leverage that weight is going to apply on the rotational pitch area, which is right here in the center of this tire. But the guys that are running the rear mounted fuel cells, you know, they can, especially if it's a 10, 12, or 15 gallon fuel cell, you can fill that fuel cell up and put a lot of weight, a lot of sprung weight over the rear end of the car. Now, the polar moment of inertia tells us it's going to take more energy to move that weight, but once you start moving the weight, that weight is going to move quicker than if it's over the center of the axle. But placing weight over the center of the axle is a good move if you're trying to just get the front end to come up quicker. If you need the front end to come up quicker and you need to have more help applying force, then you can have weight there and high up. You know, the S10s and any of a truck, any trucks that are drag racing, I would try to add weight up in the tailgate area, even if I took the tailgate off and put hid weight in there, because the tailgate up high is going to be as far back from the wheel as you can get it and up high. And that's going to allow, once the weight starts to move, it's going to allow a lot of leverage to keep pulling the front end up, which is going to keep loading more weight load onto the rear of the car. And the more weight we can keep over the rear slick, the more we are improving the coefficient of traction for the rear slick. And that means the more power I can continue to apply to the rear tire, slick or radial, and the more power I can apply, then the faster I'm going to get to the finish line. If you're trying to keep control of this and you have too much front end rise, or the front end's coming up too quick, then you can still add weight here, and that's still going to help load the rear end, but it's not going to allow the front to come up as fast. You can minimize the weight there. You can minimize the height of the weight. I mean, it doesn't, your car may not need it up as far back and as high as you can get it. So generally, in a no prep car, all of our focus and most of our attention is getting to 50-50 weight balance. And if you can get 52 to 48, even better for no prep. Now for a track car, especially if we're talking about a big tire slick car, 99% of the time for a big tire track prep car, we're going to have a wheelie bar. And wheelie bars are definitely going to help control the front end rise, which is also going to help control not crushing and overcoming a big tire slick. I mean, wheelie bars and big tire slicks is like peanut butter and jelly. They just go together. Do you have to run a wheelie bar with big tire slicks? No, you don't. It depends on your car. But for a prep car, especially a big tire car with slicks, I'm not shooting for this type of weight ratio. For me in that situation, I'm happier with 53 to 54% on the front and 47 to 46% on the back for a prep big tire car. On a track car where you're running on a prep track, I mean not a radial prep, but like a bracket prep or a big tire prep. If you're running a big tire car on a radial prep, then you're really going to be loading the wheelie bars, because a lot of times you're going to really be upsetting a slick, because you're actually going to start dead hooking a slick, and that's the worst thing you can do with a big tire slick car is start dead hooking it on a radial prep. But anyways, as we go from prep to no prep, the general thought is the more weight that I can statically build my car with, especially to get the 50-50 or 52-48, 52 on the rear, 48 on the front, then those all go into where I place things on my build. For a no prep car, we've talked about, having a center of gravity up high is your friend. For a prep track car, your center of gravity may be really down low. The 48 Ford for me, the center of gravity was up really high, and it really wanted to wheel stand on a prep track. I mean, we tried running it without wheelie bars, and it stood straight up on the bumper. I could have flipped the freaking 48 completely over. Now, it had a very high center of gravity. The motor was up almost 1.5 inches over stock. And when we added the blower, the center of gravity weight went up because the amount of weight we put higher on top of the motor. With the Studebaker, though, the center of gravity is much lower. And the Studebaker is actually a true big tire prep track car. The 48 Ford, the motor and transmission were so much higher in the 48 Ford, and that's why we struggled so much launching that car on a prep track. But the 48 Ford made a great street drag car because the center of gravity was so high and because it moved weight so quick. Now, some of the things that fault us was the 48 Ford is very nose heavy. And to really make it a competitive no prep car, I'm going to have to take some of the weight off the nose and move some of the weight to the rear. So with this weight placement situation, it really depends on your car. And generally for a no prep car, I'm going to need you to get to 50-50 or 52-48. And hopefully you can do that without having to add hundreds of pounds of weight to the rear of your car. You may have to, but if you're going to be adding weight, I would add some weight over the center of the axles. You're probably going to equalize that with a little bit of weight on the differential. And if you still need help, then you're going to probably have to add some weight high and as far back as you can get it to help promote load transfer to the rear and to try to get you to 50-50 or 52% on the rear. After that, and if you have the right amount of front end travel, which for no prep, I'm really wanting at least 6 inches of front end travel or more to allow for load transfer, and I want that weight to come in slowly, not immediately on the hit, but within the first 1 to 1.5 seconds, I want to slowly bring that front end up and move the weight to the rear. We got to have the right components on the rear. If you're running ladder bars or 4-link lift or leaf springs, you got to have the right setup to get the rear tire planted and take advantage of this weight that you're moving around. And these are very key components of placing weight in the car. I got several links in the description of this video. One is a very detailed discussion of weight transfer and force vectors and what happens as you place weight around the car. That's in the description, so please go take a look and check that description out. Hey, this video is going to be getting a little long, so let's pause. Let me see what kind of questions you have. What am I not covering? Please include those in the comments. Please give me a thumbs up. If I haven't covered something you want to cover on weight placement, ask me the questions. I'll see if I can roll it into another video. Helps me get content out that you're trying to see and understand. If it's something that I can answer in a comment, I will. If it's something that requires me making another video, I'll make another video. Thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, when it comes to weight placement, we're trying to do 3 things. We want to go fast, we want to go straight, and we want to be safe. Good night, guys.